leaders of political parties contesting the federal elections of St. Kitts and Nevis, slated to be held Friday, August 5th, 2022. Today is Thursday, August 4th. The first interview was held yesterday with the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, the Honorable Mark Brantley. This is the second interview. Samuel Caines of the Moral Restoration Movement. And the third interview and final interview will be held this afternoon at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. with the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. Each interview is for a duration of 90 minutes. So Mr. Caines will have 90 minutes. In terms of the format, the candidate will have the first 20 minutes to make his or her case to you, the voter. Following that, questions will be posted by the host. And those questions in basis are basically from what we have garnered from you, the general and listening public, over a period of time. And then, within the final 30 minutes, you, the listener and voter, will have the opportunity to call in directly on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700 to ask the candidate or a question, make a comment, or you can even just wish them all the very best. The candidate will have 2 minutes in which to answer each question and 1 minute for a follow-up if there is a follow-up question. We ask all to be guided by the particular rules. Now, we, as usual, will not accept anything that we deem is not within our broadcast standards. That is, anything that we deem could be defamatory. We have organized these so that against the backdrop, there is a time and place for everything, and we do try to keep certain standards and content here at Vaughan Radio, and we ask you to continue, as you always do, abide and respect that. Having said all that, we begin now with Mr. Samuel Caines of the Morals Restoration Movement. Good morning, Mr. Caines, and welcome. Thank you very much for participating in this interview, and I dare say in other engagements that we've had before as well. We wish you all the very best, you and your party. Now, you have your opening comments, and you have 20 minutes in which to make your case.
Thank you very much, Webbo, and a very pleasant good morning to you, and a very pleasant good morning to all of those who are tuning to Vaughan Radio, the powerhouse of the Caribbean. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. My appreciation is perfectly in order. Thank you very much. Now, 20 minutes. I like you to stop me when I get to that point, because I have a lot to say, and I just may go over by another 20. Anyway, Webbo, you know, the CCM and the NRP are established parties. They have been around for a long time. The NRP since 1970 and the CCM since 1986-87. And so, of course, they require much less introduction than myself. My party, the Moral Restoration Movement, is relatively new. It was only in July of last year that we launched right here on Vaughan Radio. And there are just two of us still, myself and Patricia Mills Jeffers, who is the candidate for Nevis 11. And so there's still some people out there, in spite of all the campaigning that we have done, and in spite of all of the publicity, there are still some people who know very little about us, and some have never heard about us. There are people who tell me plain out that they do not follow politics, and so they aren't aware. So they were rather surprised when they found out. So as a start, I will go back and talk about why the Moral Restoration Movement, because I still get the question, so why do you need to form a party? There is NRP and there is CCM. Why another party? I respect their views. I personally am delighted that there is a third party, and I hope that one day there'll be a fourth party. Give the people options, because you know, I hear people say all the time, I am fed up of the CCM, but I am not going back to the NRP. So, there was a time when the whole of Nevis was NRP. And you hear people saying that they are fed up of the system, but they are not going back to the NRP. And so what do they do? What do they do? They stay away from the polls. They give up. They don't follow. And that's very unfortunate, because politics impact all of our lives, and it's important that people follow and participate. And I think that having other options is the ideal thing, is the way to go. And so here is a third party, the Moral Restoration Movement, and I really hope that people will come forward and form a fourth party. People have to be bold, though. People have to be bold, and people have to be fearless, because a lot of people are still very fearful. My goodness, you'll be surprised at how people told me they were afraid to nominate me. Because afraid of what? Afraid of reprisal action from the sitting government. And you're talking about people who are totally out of reach of the tentacles of the government, given the fact that they have already secured pension by virtue of the fact that they have worked over 30 years. But they are afraid. But I hope that people would get away from that fear. This is your country. You should want the best for your country. And if getting involved in politics is what is required, then do it. Do it. Don't be afraid. And it's unfortunate, and you want to condemn those persons in government who make it difficult for people, and make it difficult by virtue of the fact that they said negative things, or they try to find means. They try to find means to victimize them in some small way, or leave them out. And that's unfortunate. But anyway, that's for other conversations. And so, why the Moral Restoration Movement? People sometimes say, Webbo, that there is no morality in politics. In our lives, we try to live a life full of morals and a life guided by ethics. But people say when it comes to politics, there is no morality, and so anything goes. And that's very unfortunate. That is just so absolutely unfortunate. And I can't imagine how somebody, on the one hand, will do something and allow morals and ethics to guide them, and then when it comes to politics, they throw it to the wind. It's unbelievable. But anyway, we looked at Patricia Mills Jeffers, and myself. I want to call her Patricia Mills Jeffers because her name appears on the ballot, will appear on the ballot paper as Mills Jeffers. Mills, of course, is her maiden surname, and Jeffers her marriage surname. But when we got together, we looked at the political situation in our country. And Pat and I have lived here all our lives. We have paid attention to what is happening, and we dislike what we have seen. What we have seen is what I term the winner-take-it-all syndrome. When a party wins an election, as far as they are concerned, Nevis belongs to them. This is our country. This is our turn. And the people who vote for us, the people who dress up in the green, and the people who dress up in the blue, they are the ones who matter. And without having to go into detail, because we are a small island, people see it happen all around them all the time. And so they get the gravy. They are the ones who go on the boards and everything. And everybody else must be ignored or get just the crumbs from the table. So to put it in local parlance, those persons must get the loaf of bread, and everybody else get the crumbs. And that has been the culture. That has been the culture of our politics. And it's disgusting, because everybody pays taxes. We are citizens and residents of this country. For the man who migrated from Guyana and came here and has been living here for a number of years paying taxes, he's on the same level as a citizen as far as I'm concerned. And so he deserves the same rights. But however, how do our politicians look at it historically? Once I win, this country is mine. And you hear the nonsense that they talk, lip service, that they are the servants of the people. They are the servants of the people. You hire me to be your servant. We are the servants of the people. Sounds so good. But in reality, that's not how it works. That is not how they make it work. They make it work as if they are the masters of the people. And we see it all the time. We see it all the time. And what is pathetic is that, and unfortunate, is that the people become fearful of them. The same people who come by your door and beg you to vote for them, the very next day, a week later, you become fearful of them. And that's absolutely wrong. And so that drove us, that winner take it all syndrome drove us to form a new political party in this country. And we call it Moral Restoration Movement. We decide we have to restore the morals to this country. This absolute nonsense that there is no morality in politics. Morality in your life or outside of politics. But once you decide to talk politics, morals must be thrown to the wind. Nonsense. And so that is what drove us, and hence we are here. Hence we launched in July of last year and formed the Moral Restoration Movement. Now, of course, we have been paying attention, and we see things on the island that governments have ignored, and where they have not ignored them, they pay very little attention to. And so we decided, you know, we were here when sugar, which was the backbone of our economy, died. We were here on the island. And we were here when the diversification started around 1980, where the government started to go into more of a service culture. We were here when tourism became the backbone of our economy, taking over from sugar. And so we realized that tourism brings a lot of revenue, and ready and quick revenue, to the country. And so we decided, having seen what Marriott did in St. Kitts in terms of the transformation of the economy, having seen what Four Seasons did in Nevis in terms of the transformation of the economy, putting millions of dollars into the economy, employing a lot of people, we decided that we can't sit back and wait for a developer. Of course, lots of countries look forward for investors to come in and put down the physical plant and then get a reputable hotel organization or hotel company to come in and run the facility. And that's fine, and that's the ideal way to go. But, you know, if you go back to 1976 in St. Kitts, with the Royal St. Kitts Hotel over in Frigate Bay, Robert Bratcher didn't wait. He wanted a hotel there. And so he decided he has to get involved financially in putting down the physical plant. And so we have decided the same thing. We are going to look for investors, look for developers, and if we are not getting them, we won't be sitting back. We will find the money somewhere. There are lots of lending institutions out there, right? Because we saw what happened with the Marriott, and we saw what happened with the Four Seasons. It looked good, it smelled good, it turned out to be good, and so why not perpetuate that? And so that's one of the things that we decided. And then, and of course, all along, you know, Webbo, all along while we were planning all this, we were just thinking about the local election. We were gearing ourselves up for the local election and having all these plans. New hotel. We look at agriculture on this island. We have heard so much about agriculture, but everybody just basically touch it on the periphery. We have not seen anybody go into depth. You know, Webbo, let's talk some history here. You and I were in high school together with the history. Back in 1821, Webbo, when the governor of the Leeward Islands visited these islands, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, and Antigua, but he was based in Antigua. He said that all 82 sugar plantations on Nevis were better kept, better maintained than all the other islands. He said that every bit of arable land on Nevis was under cultivation. And that is why he called Nevis Queen of the Caribbean. Now today, we talk about the thrust in agriculture. But when you drive out, you see large portions of land just lying bare. And if you go to the supermarket, or if the water, let me put it this way, if the water is rough, or there is a storm for a few days, We run out of cabbage and carrots and other vegetables on this island. But yet, there is a thrust in agriculture. But yet, the Minister of Agriculture is doing a fabulous job. But if there's a storm for 3 days, we can't find things in the supermarkets in terms of vegetables. Well, what kind of thrust is that? That is not thrust. And so we of the MRM decided when we are elected, we will show them what thrust in agriculture really is. We will show them what that really is. I mean, we have the land, we have terrific soil, but we are not putting it to any good use. And so we are still importing heavily. And so our thing was the food import bill must be brought down. That must be brought down if elected. And that was fundamental for us. And then our ocean next door. We have that tremendous resource there called the ocean. And we are not maximizing any profit out of it. We have our fishermen who go out and catch a few fishes and come in and sell, but that's not enough. And here again, if we are serious about reducing our food import bill, we need to come up with ways to tap into that resource. And I'm not going to sit here and try to come up with all the solutions, because as the old saying goes, 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than 2. And so I would rather wait until such time and then have a group of persons who can brainstorm and come up with ideas on how they can tap into that resource and maximize benefit for the island and reduce our food import bill. So we have the ocean, we have agriculture. You know, I often tell people about the story that when I was the Human Resources Director at Four Seasons, one day I did an exercise. I wanted to find out how many plates we were serving per day in the employee cafeteria, because you know that hotel had about 750 employees. And so I gave an employee the assignment to just put a tick as each employee entered the cafeteria door. And I did the exercise for a whole week. And on average, we were serving 550 plates per day in the employee cafeteria. This has nothing to do with the hotel. This is just the employee cafeteria. Think of it, Webbo. 550 plates per day. That is a lot of food consumption. A lot of food consumption. But where all that cabbage and all that carrot for the coleslaw come from? Miami. When in 1821, every bit of arable land on this island was under cultivation. And we have ministers of agriculture over the years who say that they are superstars. Superstars? Really? And so, as far as I'm concerned, they have been failures. And my thing is, when the moral restoration movement get elected, all of this we will reverse. Every bit of food item that the hotels need, once it can be produced here, it will be produced here. So that's one of the things that we decided. Hotel development, tap into the ocean, agriculture. But again, while we were thinking all of that, we were basically thinking of the local election, which is constitutionally due by March of next year. That's what we were thinking. And so we were prodding along. Then the minimum wage. The minimum wage is $9. It has been $9 for a long time. And the cost of living has gone way ahead. Minimum wage has not kept pace. And so when Pat and I discussed it, we thought this is definitely something that we need to work on. The minimum wage should not be $9 any longer. What's the right figure? Again, I am very, very careful when it comes to trying to make unilateral decisions. 2 heads are still better than 1. 3 heads are still better than 2. I know for sure that $9 is only a drop in the ocean. It's too small. It has not kept pace. But what's the right figure? Should it be 10? Should it be 11? Should it be 12? Then we'll have to have the officials in the Ministry of Finance and other persons get together and look at that carefully and decide what the right figure should be. But the minimum wage definitely need to move from $9. It keep you below subsistence level. In fact, people are barely at subsistence level with minimum wage. You can just buy the very basics in the supermarkets and the stores. And so that's something that's on our list as a priority as well. And then we also looked at what we can do. There are lots of things on this island, Webbo, that can generally improve the lives of people. Things that appear simple to some of us, but very, very important to a lot of people. And I'm only going to, I have a list, but time does not permit me. I'm looking at the clock here. Time does not permit me to get into all of it, but I'll just give one example. You know, Webbo, on this island, our transportation system, our bus transportation system is very poor. It's let me use a different word. It's not terribly reliable after certain hours. Now, Nevis has over 9,000 cars. An island with about 12,000 people has over 9,000 cars. And I remember the lady told me one time she has a car, but she wished she didn't have to have a car because she wants to buy some land. But when she finished working in the hotel at 11 o'clock in the night, she needs to get home. And hence the investment in the car. Now let's look at the transportation system from Gingerland to Charlestown, Charlestown to Newcastle. Pretty good. Between 6 to 6. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. pretty good. But once it gets into the evening, everybody retires. The bus drivers retires. People can't get home. Hotels are busy in the evening. People can't get home. But during the daytime, let us look at that area from Zion, Webbo. Go around via Butlers to Newcastle. If somebody wants to go from Zion to Maddens, that person would have to catch a bus from Zion, come to Charlestown, and then go from Charlestown the other way. And they're only going to Maddens, which is just 2 miles away, because there are no buses on that route. And so, one of the things, and this is one of the small things I'm talking about. This is not one of the major items. This is just one of the many small things that we have on our list that's critical, albeit it appears small. And we decided that if elected, we will put on a bus system from Gingerland, Market Shop in Gingerland, to Newcastle via Butlers, back and forth. Of course, it will not be for free, but there will be a nominal fee that people will have to pay. And I'm sure lots of people will appreciate it. So those are some of the small services that we will provide. I feel that in a country where people pay taxes, government is responsible for providing all these little services. Going over to St. Kitts, to JNF Hospital, all people barely able to walk have to struggle to go across there. We should have a boat for that, because our sick have to go over to St. Kitts so often to consult with the specialists over there. But those are things government ignore because they appear so insignificant, and we decide we will have to take care of those things. And then all of a sudden, Webbo, while we are doing all of that, preparing for the local election, then we hear confusion in St. Kitts with the federal government. Mash up. And then a federal election has been dropped on us like a bomb. And so we decided, all right, we will just put things aside and focus on the federal election, but we'll take part. And so suddenly my focus shifted from St. John's to St. Paul's and St. John's, Nevis 9. And Patricia Jeffers, her focus shifted from St. James to St. James and St. Thomas's, Nevis 11. And so here we are now preparing for a federal election. The local election is still just around the corner. And so I thought I should go back and give that little backdrop as to the formation of the moral restoration movement and exactly where we were going and where we are now. So all the focus now is on the federal election. Now, we are campaigning, and the big issue out there, the big issue is fair share for Nevis. Fair share for Nevis has been a big issue for a very long time. From since 1983, when the Constitution was written. Now, if we go back as far as 1980, it was in February of 1980 that the NRP formed a coalition government with the People's Action Movement. Nevis barely had an economy. In fact, Nevis probably didn't even have an economy. Nevis' economy was actually joined with St. Kitts, because many of you will remember Charles E. Mills. He was the Minister of Nevis Affairs, the only minister that time, and he was part of the Labour government. So that was prior to 1980. But from 1980, when we formed a coalition with PAM, the Nevis government, or the St. Kitts Nevis government, PAM NRP, had a nice sharing arrangement. But the reason why we had a nice sharing arrangement is because Nevis had the balance of power. Sim Daniel was the Minister of Finance. Nevis had the balance of power. Labour had 4 seats, PAM had 3, and the NRP had 2. And so Simmons had to suck up to everything. He had to tolerate everything. We had the balance of power. Then come 1983, we became independent. We saw clause section 110, which referred to sharing of revenue. Every bit of revenue, it speaks to taxable revenue. As far as I'm concerned, revenue is revenue. And so if you sell a house or a building that is owned by the government, that money is revenue. It should go in the consolidated fund. And if I am elected, that's where it will go. It will not just be taxable revenue. Every cent that comes in from the CVI program will be placed in the consolidated fund. Because you see, when these guys set up little separate boards to manage these funds, they put people on them who are their lackeys. They put people on them who are their close associates. And then soon a lot of that money becomes slush funds. And some of it disappear. And so I am pushing for that. Now, the fair share issue, I'm not too sure if that will ever be resolved unless Nevis has someone in the Prime Minister's chair. And so in my campaign, I am asking the people to vote for the MRM and hope and pray that the results in St. Kitts are inconclusive. Because if the results in St. Kitts are inconclusive, then quite naturally, as has happened in the past, they would have to come to Nevis to form an amalgamation or a coalition government with one of the parties over here. And if I am that person, I will form a coalition with a party in St. Kitts on condition that I am made the Prime Minister. And if I am the Prime Minister, then we know Nevis is guaranteed its fair share. Whatever is the population of Nevis compared to St. Kitts, we get the pro rata portion. Right now it's about 20%, we'll get our 20%. And that matter will be put to bed. But I know I've exhausted my time, Webbo. I wish I could have continued for another 20 minutes. Well, I have to respect your position. I
almost guarantee you that when we do the questions from myself, and later on from the listeners and the audience, you'll be able to bring out a lot more of the points and information that you have.
Sure.
With the first question, thank you, Mr. Caines, for your opening statements and comments. With the first question that I have, you have spent quite a bit of your time, and you said deliberately so, to explain that you were preparing for a local election and then all of a sudden the federal election. So maybe we can start by giving your understanding of the difference in function between the Nevis Island administration and the federal government. This is a federal election. Not everybody understands.
Okay. Now, the Nevis Island government, as it was outlined in the very beginning, The Nevis Island government is responsible for managing the affairs of Nevis. Now, you know, this is interesting. Let's go right back to 1967 when we had associated statehood. Remember that song? Trinity of Islands, and as you see?
Yes, but keep in mind we have two minutes for this question and then a minute for the follow-up.
Sure.
So start now, yes.
Back to 1967 when we had St. Kitts Nevis became an associated state with Britain, responsible for its internal affairs. But Britain was responsible for all external affairs. When we formed that, when we created the federal government and the Nevis Island administration in 1983, it was almost something similar, where Nevis appeared to be like a colony of St. Kitts, because Nevis was responsible and still is responsible for its internal affairs. St. Kitts is responsible for police and other external matters, right? So according to what the issue is externally, the Nevis government still has to liaise with the St. Kitts government. But as far as matters specific to Nevis are concerned, Nevis has the authority to make those decisions. For example, during the pandemic, one would recall, that's the most recent thing I can go through, when St. Kitts decided that they are going to have a lockdown. Nevis decided, well, there is no COVID in Nevis, right? The Premier said there is no COVID over here, so we don't have to lock down. You have to lock down over there because your numbers have peaked. Ours hasn't, right? So that's really the basic difference. Nevis handle internal affairs. Anything external, based on the gravity, consult through St. Kitts.
And as we indicated, so we have separated the functions.
Yeah.
However, Nevis participates in the federal government. Mm-hmm. There is a prevailing view among some that the same representative on Nevis, who is a representative in the Nevis Island administration, ought not to be a representative at the same time in the federal government. What is you and your party's position on that?
Well, you know, Webbo, let's go back to 1983. When PAM presented its white paper in 1983, Limo of Labour presented a green paper, if you would recall. And Limo said, why not let us have a party, a government for Nevis, a government for St. Kitts, and then have a federal arrangement for the two islands. That was struck out. What exists today is what was put in place. Now, I personally agreed with Limor. I think that's the best arrangement. But that was not implemented. And so we have to work with what we have until the constitution is changed. That's my position.
Put another way, am I correct in interpreting that you have no problem because it is a law that you will represent in both houses?
Absolutely, until we change what we created in 1983.
Explain, if you will, for the electorate, how you can effectively, and the probability, beyond hope and pray, because I noted that you said that as you go into these elections, and as the results come out tomorrow evening or Saturday morning, the probability of you holding a majority, first of all, the way the construct is, the probability of any party on Nevis holding a majority is non-existent. But, however, the probability of the balance of power is very existent.
Yes.
But even with that, you are more behind the 8 ball just because you do not have full representation as far as candidates is concerned.
Yeah.
So explain, if you will, how you will be able to get to the seat of power and then be able to get what you desire for Nevis.
Webbo, history has value. History has value. Let's go back to 1973 in St. Vincent, the Big Island. Milton Cato got 6 seats out of 13. Ebenezer Joshua got 6. And James Mitchell over on the small island of Beckway got 1. Both of them went across and lobbied James Mitchell to join them. James Mitchell said, I will join with the party that makes me the Prime Minister. And Milton Cato offered him. And so James Mitchell went over to the Big Island as Prime Minister of St. Vincent with 1 seat. Right? And so though we are contesting 2 of the 3 over here, right? It all depends on how the results pan out in St. Kitts.
What if, as has happened before, one argues that were you to get 2, just for argument's sake, there are another 9, and there must be at least a combination, by the very least, a combination or singly of at least 4 from somewhere else to construct a majority. You agree with that?
Yes.
What if, let's say, one of those parties would have more than 2, and they were to argue, well, I have more than you, so I should be the Prime Minister.
Well, you know, Webbo, you go in with a certain mindset and a certain demand. But once you get to the table, then negotiations have to take place, and then we have to have agreements. The last thing I would like to see is us having to go back to the polls. And if we are all strong-headed and nobody is willing to compromise, and we have those kind of results that you refer to, we may end up going back to the polls, and that would be unfortunate. And so, though I, if we were to have a situation like 1993, 4-4, Pam and Labour, then I would make that demand. But as it is now sitting here, I would definitely go in with the intention of demanding the Prime Minister's position, but I am open to negotiations and discussions and compromise.
Before, as you had indicated, as I indicated at the start of the program, that we have 3 of the leaders who are 3 of 6 of the leaders who are participating in this election,
yes,
who are participating in these interviews.
Yes.
We have done one already, who is the Premier,
yeah,
Mr. Brantley. We did him yesterday. Yesterday, he outlined that the signature issue, and there were other issues, for his party, the Concerned Citizens Movement, is a fair share. What is your signature issue or issues in this campaign?
You know, I'm glad I have been writing a lot. I am really glad that I have been writing a lot on Facebook, because if I wasn't, and I say here, fair share as well, some persons may be inclined to disbelieve. But if you go back to Facebook, where I have been doing a lot of writing, that is what I have been stressing. The signature issue is fair share. When you talk about over $5 billion, over $5 billion, if Nevis were to get 20% of that, 20% of that, look at what that will do to our economy. Look at the positive impact that will have on our economy. Right now, we cannot generate that kind of money in Nevis. We cannot. So that absolutely is the issue. But before you ask me the next question, but based on history, we have not received it. When we have the balance of power, we get a little thing, and when we lose the balance of power, we get dumped on the side. And that's the reason why I have been advocating that the only solution here is a division sitting in the Prime Minister's chair.
So notwithstanding you are in a different party or organization to Mr. Brantley.
Yeah, we agree on that.
You agree on that, and you look at it more as what's good for Nevis.
Absolutely.
Rather than a party situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Webbo, it's really sad. It's really, really pathetic, you know. It's really pathetic. It's really unfortunate that we have to get to that point. That we are 2 little islands, and many of us have one parent on St. Kitts, one parent on Nevis. Sometimes there's a little insularity in sport, but we are intrinsically close. And when it comes to that share, the politicians on St. Kitts feel like they should ignore us and rob us. And we have been robbed. It is just so unfortunate. But one day it will come to an end. And it just might come to an end with this election. God above will make that decision for us.
The politicians on St. Kitts rob us. You just made that statement.
Yeah, absolutely, big time.
You also have earlier said that you intend to go in, negotiate, and hope and pray that things fall a certain way, that you occupy the Prime Minister's chair.
Yeah.
I listened to you on your campaign trail, and you are arguing that the best seat or the best position to acquire this fair share is in the Prime Minister's seat.
Absolutely.
But if you don't get there in the Prime Minister's seat, or let me ask the question this way. Do you have any pre or current arrangements with any political party or organization on St. Kitts?
Absolutely none. And you know, a few persons have actually asked me the question, if you were to win 1 or 2 seats, which party will you join with? And my thing is, how could I answer the question? I could only answer that question Saturday morning based on the results. But prior to Saturday morning, I can't answer that question. It's all based on the results.
So if persons were to say that you're affiliated openly or secretly with party A, B, C, or D, you say what?
Totally false.
One of the things that you also alluded to when you spoke about yourself and your other candidate getting into the political arena, you referenced that both of you feel qualified. Correct?
Yeah.
Why do you think that you're qualified to get into the political arena and as a consequence be representatives of the people?
Man, I love that question, Webbo. Thank you for asking me that one. Thank you for asking me that question. And you know why I say it? It's because unfortunately on Nevis, a lot of people seem to think that once you're a lawyer, you have the panacea to all ills. You come out of the university and you're 24 years old. You have no experience, but you are a lawyer and you have the panacea to all ills. And suddenly you can just make it happen. Kennedy Simmons became the Prime Minister at age 42 the Premier at age 42 in 1980. His background was a medical doctor, right? And suddenly he was just plummeted into another area, another field in which he had no background. Now, I have been out there. I was a school teacher for 7 years. I worked in the hotel. I was a director of human resources for 20 years, managing over 750 employees with diverse abilities. I have a background of 5 years in insurance. I was the manager of the Nevis Tourist Board. I was the president of a community club. I have been around in different areas of government and private sector. And I think that amply qualifies me to serve in government and make mature decisions based on my past.
So while that qualifies you to represent myself and others, you think therefore it is fair for one to examine and ask you perhaps to explain the performance or lack thereof of you as a public servant, you as a school teacher, you as a director of human resources at Four Seasons, and arguably doing a wonderful job. You think it's fair play and fair game for those that you put up that qualifies you, your record to be examined?
You know, Webbo, absolutely. You see what happened? Having been out there now for like almost 40 years in these positions, what happens here is that you continue your development. These positions actually aid your development. You're interacting with a lot of people. They are learning from you, you are learning from them. Lots of symbiotic relationships. Lots of symbiotic relationships. And especially in the hotel business, where you have general managers, people who come in, spend 2-3 years, you interact with them, you learn a lot from them, they move on, others come. As a school teacher, you get transferred to other schools, you work on the different teachers, you look at their styles, you look at the way they do business, and you learn in the process. You know, when I was an interviewer, I used to ask interviewees this question: tell me one thing about any one of your previous jobs, any one of your previous bosses that impact you so strongly that in your dispensation of work, you always carry that out. Because we learn a lot from each other. We learn a lot from each other. And so for me, being out there in all these different fields, it was like college experience. I keep learning. And so that has developed me over the years to the point where I am today.
So you, in that regard, you made reference earlier to the fact that when you were speaking about the fair share, and you argued that your record is there on the fair share because you were doing a lot of writings and postings and so on. So it is no secret
as to my position.
As to your position.
Precisely.
And you are not just saying it's fair share for Nevis. You have made your case, basically, how and now you also, in those writings and those dispensations and those modes of communication, addressed your performance at Four Seasons, because some persons, you said in the same podcast or whatever means of communication it was, questioned your performance as a stellar, in reference to a stellar performance in the same position, Director of Human Resource at Four Seasons. Was it fair for them to question it?
Well, of course, it's fair for people to question anything that you do, because they are looking at it from their perspective, and I have no issues with people questioning anything at all that I do, right? What's important is that I provide them with a response to justify everything that I did. And I think I can amply justify everything that I did, because I was not representing myself. That's the important thing. I was not representing myself. I was representing an institution that has laws and lots of guidelines.
You also reference, and again, in terms of the federal government, because that is what we're focusing on.
Yes.
As we go to the polls tomorrow. In terms of, and you also mentioned how unfortunate it was that we have reached to this stage after less than 2 years coming from the polls, because something happened. One of the things that persons discuss is term limits for the Prime Minister. An attempt was made, it was not successful. What is you and your party's position on that?
I do believe in term limits, and when the Team Unity government decided that they were going to pursue team limits, I applauded it. I really applauded the idea, because I feel that 2 terms should be adequate for a Prime Minister, and if that person chooses to remain in the government, if elected of course, but in other capacities other than the Prime Minister, then that's fine. If the people want you and the people elect you, fine. Like as we are seeing now, Denzel Douglas is no longer the leader of the party, but he's still in the party. And if the Labour Party wins the election on St. Kitts, he will not be the Prime Minister. And if he wins a seat, he'll be a minister. So I really applauded the idea. I just think it's so unfortunate that the Team Unity demonstrated to us that through their actions that all they were really interested in was getting rid of Denzel Douglas, and everything else was just put on the back burner. You know, I listened to Dr. Simmons yesterday and I listened to it again this morning. I've listened to it 3 times now, and I laughed when he said that when the PAM CCM government is elected tomorrow, he wants them to immediately look at good governance, look at term limits, and he went back to the Charlestown Accord and all the things that they have there that they did not do. He went back to them, and I laugh. I listened and I laugh and I said, this is so a shame. This is just so a shame, because all these things were there. The Bastia High School, right? I remember Eugene Hamilton in 2015. If elected, I will ensure in my first term that there will be a national health scheme and every citizen in this country will have health insurance. Where is that today? In 2020, they didn't even mention it. So, yes, I agree with you, Webbo, in the 2 terms, but it's just a shame that they didn't do it. And I don't think they should be given a chance now. Another party should be given a chance.
I asked Mr. Brantley this question yesterday, and I prefaced it by saying, when I asked a question, I prefaced by making a comment and said, this is not a silly question. It is a real question. You have 2 seats, not 2 seats.
But I'm delighted. I didn't want to correct you there. I didn't want to correct you, because I'm thrilled already.
You're running for 2 seats.
Yeah, I'm contesting 2 seats.
Is it possible that you can form the government, federal government, if you win those 2 seats by yourself with 2 seats?
Of course not.
It's not possible.
Not. We only have 3 seats in Nevis, and I have made the point again in my writing that a party of Nevis cannot form the federal government on its own. It has to be in amalgamation with the party on St. Kitts.
So the federal government cannot be run with 3 seats?
Well, I know exactly where you're going, because currently we have that situation in St. Kitts where the former Prime Minister Timothy Harris is running the government with just how many? 2?
3.
2 elected members with him?
3. 2 with him, yeah. So a total of 3.
And the lady, yeah, a total of 3.
So why can't it happen?
That's not a real situation. That's an artificial situation. But
so
I think it's because in St. Kitts Nevis we are. I don't want to use the word docile. That might be a strong word. I think we are just a law-abiding citizenry, or people. We are very law-abiding. We like peace. We like quiet, and so we tolerated that nonsense that they have done.
Work with me. We are law-abiding people.
Yes.
Who the law says that to form the government, you should have the majority of 11.
Right.
And we have a situation that we have 3 out of 11, and we are law-abiding.
You see, Webbo, yes, we are law-abiding. We don't want to have anarchy. We don't want to have chaos in the country. And I think the consolation here is that we know that election is just around the corner. This couldn't be long-term, of course, or else there would be reaction. There would be reaction. But it's very short-term. Under 3 months, election is around the corner. So why mash up the country for that? As wrong as it is, let's be tolerant. Let's be tolerant, and come tomorrow, it will be fixed.
So if you have 2 seats and you decide to form the government with the 2 seats, then due to the fact that we are law-abiding people, we just allow you to go ahead.
No. That can't happen. That can't happen from tomorrow.
So it cannot happen again.
It can't happen from tomorrow.
It can't.
That artificial situation that took place in St. Kitts, we all know it's wrong. But as I said, you know, you don't want to create a chaotic scene and do damage to your country's infrastructure, that you will then have to divert money that could be used for other developmental activities to repair all the damage that you do. It's short term. It's just 3 months. We let it play out. The consolation is election is tomorrow.
And then in 2015, 2014, when we had a similar situation, we applied the same sort of formula. It will soon be over.
2014, 15?
Yeah, we had a government with 5.
We had a government with 5 in 2014?
Yes.
No.
No?
Oh, you're talking about with the Denzel Douglas situation after Harris was fired and Sam moved on. Okay, yes, the same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing, yes, because election was around the corner.
Right, 2 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to me then that what if someone argues that if that's the way we are as a people and we're about to change the Constitution, why don't we put that in? That's a joke.
No, that's not realistic, Webbo. That won't happen. That won't happen. No, we can't put that in. That's a recipe for disaster.
Let me ask you this. As we're talking about elections and how people get elected, and we understand the importance of persons holding on to positions, etc., and then what people do to get into particular positions. Again, Mr. Brantley, when he was here in his interview yesterday, we discussed, and he did indicate, because you know he was a part of the last unity administration in the cabinet, and he did indicate that there was a draft bill that in part spoke to address the overseas voters, what we call overseas voters.
Yeah.
It is not the correct legal term, but I think we both agreed yesterday, Mr. Brantley and myself, as we were discussing it, that people understand what we mean by overseas voters.
Sure.
And he did admit that his cabinet, the cabinet that he was a part of, had a draft proposal or draft bill that, were it to be passed in Parliament, would have affected the overseas voters negatively in terms of the future participation in the process. You know, everybody's. He said that he was opposed to it, and proffered and said that that bill did not go through, primarily because he and his team, Sir Jeffers and Mr. Evelyn, if they were there at the time, but his team decided that they were not going to support it. He couldn't support it because he more believed in enfranchising people. What is your position on that in terms of making it difficult? I won't use the term taking off the overseas voters because it was not directly that, but the way it was constructed, it was making it difficult for them to be able to participate. What is your view on that?
You know, Webbo, I'll tell you a story, or I'll to use your word, I'll preface my response with a short story. In 2006, I met this lady. She came to Nevis to vote. She was born in England, but of Nevisian ancestry. And she got a ticket, and somehow she got a voter ID. But it was her first visit to Nevis. Her very first, she told me. She had never been here. But she had a voter's ID. And she got a ticket. And she came in and she said she was voting for X person who sent the ticket. Right? She was close to 30 years in age. and she was staying on for 2 more days after the election and returning. She has not returned to Nevis today. She has not returned to Nevis from since that day, right? But here she was in 2006, impacting the results for those of us who live here, because she was born in England but of Nevisian ancestry, and so as far as she's concerned, she has rights. I personally, I am totally against it. Now, the argument that a lot of people advance is that, yes, they live abroad, but they have assets here. Some people say they have property here, they have land here. Okay, fine, but you are not living here day to day. You are not living here day to day. And so I will definitely vote for it. And I cannot sit here this morning and say that I am going to, even though I have spoken to a few persons, Webbo, even though I have spoken to a few persons on the street who I have met, who came in recently for this election tomorrow. They got tickets to come here to vote tomorrow. And I have met some of them, and I have tried to persuade some of them not to vote for the party that paid for the ticket, but to vote for the MRM. But in spite of the fact that I did, in principle, I cannot sit here today and say that I support it. I am totally against it.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're so principled that it should not be done, why do it?
Why?
Why do it? You're so principled that a person who does not live here and who gets a ticket and is coming and is going back tomorrow after the vote, you are so principled about it. Why do you tell them vote for you?
Of course, because my thing is, the party that gave you a ticket, you should punish them. You should punish them. Just like how, you remember when Mark Brantley was interviewed somewhere, he said, if they give you money to vote, take it and vote against them to punish them. Take the money and vote against them to punish them. I feel the same way.
So your standard,
until we fix it, they give you a ticket to come and vote against them to punish them, because it's wrong.
So your standards with regarding to principle is guided by Mark Brantley.
No. It's not guided by Mark Brantley. I'm just using that as an example. But many people have expressed the same feeling. Many people have expressed the same feeling. If they give you money, take it and vote against them to punish them, because it's wrong. They should not try to disrespect you and have you take money for your vote. Your vote your vote doesn't have a value to it. They can't put money. You can't put money to it. So I don't agree with it, Mr. Herbert. They're not living here. They're not living here day by day.
There were 2 issues. One in relation to Dr. Janice Hodge.
Yeah.
One in relation to Mr. Spencer Brand, who is not running in this election, but Dr. Daniel Hodge had tied or attempted to tie Mr. Brantley to it, in that Mr. Brand, who is a member of the NIA, applied to for permission to do a project under the Citizenship by Investment Program, and did not apparently disclose it to the Integrity in Public Life Commission as part of his assets. Dr. Hodge, the leader of the NRP, had suggested that as a consequence, Mr. Brand should resign, or Mr. Brantley should have him resign from his cabinet. I put it to Mr. Brantley yesterday. Also, Mr. Brantley highlighted that Dr. Hodge was the head of an organization some years ago in the Virgin Islands, and you know the story on that.
Well, I have heard. I've been trying to research it. And I've heard some of it.
Right. The question I want to put to you, though, is that, as you had mentioned with you, the Four Seasons, your job or your tenure at Four Seasons was fair game for people to question and for you to give an explanation. What I wanted to know was your view on that, whether you think Mr. Brantley needed to have given an explanation in reference to that with Mr. Brand, and whether or not Dr. Hodge should give an explanation in terms of her tenure in that organization.
Well, actually, she did give an explanation. I heard it. She gave a
Right.
lengthy explanation.
Right. So you think that those matters are fair game?
Yeah.
For the person.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you're putting up yourself for office and there is an issue and the people question you on it, then you should definitely throw light on it. And she did.
Yes. Time-wise, we're going to open up the lines.
Yeah. Ooh.
1-869-469-1616 and 1700 for Mr. Samuel Caines, the leader of the Morals
Restoration.
Well, you got to work with me because you're new, right? You're the newest kid on the block as far as your party is concerned. Again, for Mr. Caines, 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. We're encouraging you to, if you have a question or comment, and we're asking you to call. When you call, you listen to your telephone, because if you listen to the radio, we may have some feedback and distortion and stuff like that. So the sooner you call, and take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We have our first caller. Good morning. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
I'm a little old school, and I listened to Mr. Caines just now, who said that Mr. Brantley would have encouraged persons who got tickets to come and vote for another party, and he said he did the same thing. And you asked him the question about principle. Well, I would have thought that if you're going back to old school and deal with principles, that the best thing to have done was to tell the people don't vote at all. Because if you are going to condone wrong and you're going to try to get them to, you're going to use punishment and principle in the same statement. I don't agree with that.
Okay. Caller, one correction. I didn't say Mr. Brantley.
Okay. What did you say? You said your friends are part, another party.
Yeah, but I didn't say Mr. Brantley.
But I actually understood it that you said Mr. Brantley to Mr. Caines. So maybe I got it wrong and the caller got it
I didn't say
wrong.
Mr. Brantley brought in anybody.
No. You didn't say you brought. Go ahead, caller.
Explain again, please.
You said Mr. Brantley would have encouraged the person who got the ticket to vote for them.
Oh, yes. When he was interviewed.
That's the thing I'm saying.
I said when he was interviewed the other day.
Yes.
And the question was asked, I think he was overseas. The question was asked about paying people for the vote. He said he's totally against it. And then he went on to say that he encouraged them to take the vote and vote against the person who give you the money.
And you are saying that you are a principled person and that you are against it, but then you ask somebody now if they got to vote for your party. And I'm saying that because I'm old school and I'm trying to get the younger generation to understand that principles of life are still available for them to use rather than corruption and stuff like that. I'm saying that you should have. I'm using my suggestion. I'm saying
Yes.
You should have told the person, yes, since you're here without a ticket, don't participate in what you consider corruption. Just enjoy music and go back. So
Okay, that's your opinion. I respect it.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. 1-869-469-1616 and 1700. I'm encouraging the callers to please be patient with us. Good morning. You're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Hello, good morning, Webbo. Good morning, Mr. Caines.
Hi, good morning.
My straight question is, I hear you have a lot, you explain and you expounded on a lot of lofty ideas about agriculture, about the transportation system and stuff like that, but I noticed that you prefaced it with when you get elected.
When I get elected?
My question to you is, what was stopping you from doing it before? And the reason I'm asking that question is because I hear the candidates prefacing what their plans are by when they get elected. And the trouble I have with that is, just this morning I was listening to the outgoing Prime Minister saying that as of September 1st, he making non-establishment workers or PEP workers part of the government stable employment, so that they'll have job letters to take to the U.S. Embassy to get loans approved, and to do this and to do that. It makes me wonder if that Prime Minister was not in the Prime Minister's seat the last 7 years. If you could address that for me. Well, your side of it. I don't expect you to address the Prime Minister's side, just your side of it.
Okay. Now, your specific question to me was, why didn't I do it before?
Why wait until after you get elected? Wouldn't it have been better that you come and say, well, this is what I've been doing?
Well, I'm a little baffled here, because with regards to the Prime Minister, I could understand the question being directed at him. Why hasn't he done it before? He has been there as Prime Minister. In this particular case, unless I am misunderstanding you,
I separated. I mentioned that as an aside, but
yeah, but in my particular case, I have never been in government.
I don't expect you to deal with the Prime Minister. I expect you to deal with you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, I have never been in government.
Oh, okay, can I help to see, caller? Do you mean, why didn't he do what he could do in a private capacity?
Yeah, in other words, the better question, Webbo, is, do you have an agricultural, like a backyard garden, a farm somewhere that you could say, well, this is what I mean?
Oh, that is why I said, unless I am being baffled, I don't understand. But listen, let me tell you,
because you went on to criticize what is going on now, and I think a fairly good attempt, a really good job is being done to criticize that. It kind of.
Okay, caller, I think he now understands what you mean. So
thank you.
Go ahead and answer the question, Mr.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I understand. Of course, yes, I do have a backyard garden. In fact, I actually sell bunches of green bananas to vendors. I do that. Up to about 2 weeks ago, I sold a few bunches of green bananas to vendors. So I do plant things. I am struggling with the monkeys like everybody else, but yes, I am very agriculturally oriented. And I grew up with my grandmother, and 5 o'clock every morning I had to be up with her and going to the land. So yes, I am. But with regards to what's going on in agriculture, you said that you think a lot is being done. I hear you, and even though you may think a lot is being done, if we have a tropical storm and the water is rough for 3-4 days, we don't have vegetables in the supermarkets with all this land. So if you look at it from that standpoint, even though in isolation you may think a lot is being done, when you look at it from that standpoint, surely much more can be done.
Well, let me ask you this in a follow-up. If you plant the whole island with stuff and you have the same tropical storm, wouldn't you stand the probability of getting the same damage, and in a few days after you have nothing?
It depends on the intensity.
Right.
Depends on the intensity, but
right,
I mean,
right.
a lot of the stuff you probably would have already reaped and have them preserved.
Oh, you will have. Okay, I got you. 469-1616, 469-1700. Your question or comment for Mr. Samuel Caines of the Morals Restoration Movement. His party is first time contesting, Mr. Caines?
First time.
And your other candidate is
Patricia Mills Jeffers, contesting for the first time as well. We are only 1 year old. We launched in July of last year.
Good morning. You're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Good morning, Mr. Caines and Mr. Webbo.
Good morning.
I want to know from Mr. Caines if he would support the idea of a permanent structure between St. Kitts and Nevis. That is a bridge where we can have continuous communication between each other.
You know, I have heard about. I first heard about it the first time it was mentioned. I think it was Dr. Kennedy Simmons in 1994 mentioned about building a bridge. And I personally espoused the idea. The finances were not there, of course, but recently I heard somebody say that building a bridge between, they already got some estimates, and it is going to cost less at this point in time, if built, than the cost to build the new prison. So, but yes, I do support the idea, and I did support it in 1994 when Dr. Kennedy Simmons first mentioned it, to ease transportation between the two islands. People say that there is going to be more crime, but concomitant with development is all these little nefarious things. We simply have to put the systems in place to counter them.
And it will also help with when Petition and Vision need medical care.
Absolutely.
Whether on St. Kitts, it make it more accessible instead to have to wait on a boat to take the patient to or from, when there can be just ambulance to the particular area and get their care done.
Caller, if you and I were to sit down and try to catalog all the positives that can come out of it in an hour, we'll probably come up with a whole book.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. 469-1616, 469-1700 for your question or comment. Mr. Samuel Caines of the Morals Restoration Movement. Let me go to the lines, and I have a question, another question in between. Good morning. You're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Mr. Caines, good morning. I just called a while ago and I gave you an opinion. Now I want to give you some advice. If you want to stay on the political stage and really make it, the best thing to do is call a spade, and basically just be fair. That's the reason why a lot of politicians don't make it, because they only see one side and they give a bias. Agriculture is booming in Nevis. There are still some little monkey problems, and some of the monkey issues have to do with the location of the monkeys. Nobody can really come into, let's say, your yard or Four Seasons property and do any culling of monkeys there. That's dangerous, right? But if you will ask you a very good question. If a storm were to pass here, or it pass in Florida, pass anywhere where you have fruit trees, they will be blown down. But you must give credit where credit is due. Agriculture is blooming in Nevis. On every food stand and every supermarket, a lot of stuff that we purchase in the supermarket are from Nevis. You just have to look and see the farmers going into the supermarkets and dropping off their product. So you have to give credit, and then you build on the credit that has been given and say, if you get in, you'll do more. But to say that basically, to try and put agriculture, I'm not on the page with you.
Father, you're gone, but I hope you're still listening. I recognize the voice. It's a good friend of mine. When I meet you again, we're going to continue this conversation, right? But I'm not putting it down. What I'm saying, what currently exists is inadequate. We can do more.
Okay. Good morning. You're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Caines. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, a question. I just wanted to puzzle, because I know this is a federal election. And when you listening to the campaign, people have approached me, tell me, listen, I want you to vote for the MRM or whatever it is, because you want to remove the CCN from office. But I cannot confuse, because I know this is a federal election. Now, how are you going to remove the CCN from office in this federal election? And if the MRM by some magic was able to win the 2 seats, then how would you align yourself to form the federal government? Because it's only at that stage you'll be able to do anything, because come Saturday morning, the concerned citizen movement will still be in government in English.
Caller, I hope I know you're gone, but I hope you're listening. Of course, that is how it has always been. Come Saturday morning, the concerned citizens movement remains the government of Nevis, right? And there'll be a federal government in St. Kitts. And the whole idea here, if I were to become the Prime Minister on Saturday morning, then my responsibility is to work closely with the concerned citizens movement. And if I mentioned in my writing that the fair share will be guaranteed, and that money will be coming to Nevis, and the concerned citizens movement will be sitting with me as the Prime Minister to agree and decide how that money will be disbursed. So we'll work in tandem, not remove them. They are the government of Nevis. As far as removing them is concerned, we have until March of next year for that.
By way of information, Mr. Caines.
Yes.
Very quickly, let me go to the caller first, give them the first preference. Good morning, you're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Yes, I'm just calling back. I just called because you see that's why Mr. Caines, the messaging is confusing. Because you are out on the road campaigning, telling people that you want to remove the citizen from office. That's what's been said. So I don't know if I'm listening on me, but that's what I'm hearing. Now you're saying that if you become the Prime Minister, then you're going to work in the CCM.
You know,
so can I explain that? I don't understand.
I think you should listen to those clips again. What I have been saying on the road is
Caines.
Yes.
Up to yesterday, you guys had a truck on the road or whatever. You were saying reject the bottle, reject the hammer, vote for the spade, remove them from office. That's what has been said.
You know, the thing about the truck on the road yesterday, you can't replay it. But if you go to we said reject the bottle, reject the hammer.
Okay, why don't we do this? Let us assume, you know, why don't you clarify what your position is?
Okay,
because
yes,
it's obvious the caller says
clarify the misunderstanding. Caller, if you're still there,
yeah,
right? The CCM is the government, and they will remain the government of Nevis until the next election, right? Which is constitutionally due by March of next year, right? If I were to win a seat in Nevis, or Pat Jeffers win a seat in Nevis in this federal election, and we amalgamate with the party on St. Kitts, and we get the Prime Minister's position, which is our first demand, then fair share will definitely no longer be an issue, right?
No, Mr. Caines, a minute of the line. I understand that.
Right.
But what I'm saying,
let me continue now.
Hold on.
All right, you go ahead.
A voter. You are coming to me and telling me, listen, I want you to vote for the MRM because I want to remove the CCM.
But Mr. Herbert just said there's confusion, so let's clarify it. But you're going back to the confusion.
What I mean from you, not clarifying that, you know?
Huh?
What I mean from you in clarifying that, because your message on the road...
But you cut across me. You know,
okay.
Your message on the road says, remove the CCM. Right? No, you are saying that you want to work the fellow going to work in the system. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I got it. Okay, I think there is maybe the words or syntax or something, but I think the caller said on one occasion you said remove the CCM, and then on another occasion you said reject the CCM.
We were on a truck yesterday.
Yeah,
I was on a truck yesterday driving to the villages of St. Paul's, Nevis 9, right? And so I said reject the hammer, reject the bottle.
Yeah, but it can be argued it was a federal election, so you're referencing the federal seat.
Federal.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. I don't know if we can get much further with it.
Yeah, we can disregard that. I don't think the caller fully understands.
Well, you know, he's a voter, he said. Yeah. And you probably can catch up with him.
I hope I catch up with him.
Because
I would like to explain to him.
Before the vote.
Yeah.
Yes, on Friday. Okay. So I think that caller and the other caller had suggested that you're the spade.
The spade.
But the irony is, the same caller who said you're the spade
said I'm call a spade a spade.
I call a spade. So what's a spade?
And I did. I did call a spade a spade. What I said to him is that not that I am condemning what agriculture. I am saying what they have done. What has been done is inadequate. is inadequate.
Right. So
It's not keeping pace with our consumption levels.
believe it or not, some persons would not know what is a spade. But
A spade is a shovel.
a spade is a shovel. So
Yes.
that's your symbol?
Yes.
Oh, it's a shovel.
A shovel.
Well, you see, it's a good thing we clear that up, because I asked somebody what it was, and they told me that it was something in the deck of cards.
In the deck of cards.
So-
No.
so
in
you're
the
not
electoral
one-
office, they have a picture of it, and it's a
Yes.
shovel.
Oh, okay, it's a shovel.
Mr. Bailey showed it to me.
So it's probably, for familiarity in terms of the public, maybe we should also say a shovel.
A shovel.
That's
Yeah.
easier to. So you're not, as some people were indicating, like the spade in the deck of cards.
No.
Okay,
No.
you're not in the cards.
No,
in the
I
deck.
had no clue what it was until Mr. Bailey showed me the picture of it
Oh, really?
in the at the electoral office.
Yeah, when I heard it, I wondered as well.
Yeah.
Okay. 1-869-469-1616 or 1700 for Mr. Caines. If you got a question or comment, you would like to even wish him all the best, you can call now. We have only a few minutes left, and if not, if we don't have any callers on the line, we'll be going into our wrap-up. So, Mr. Caines, can we start that now?
Okay.
You're fine, yes.
All right, well, tomorrow-
make your closing argument.
Yes. Tomorrow is D-Day. Tomorrow is D-Day. The day when you will go out and vote. Now, it's very important, as I have said before, that no party in Nevis can form the federal government on its own. There has to be an amalgamation with a party on St. Kitts. And whereas the other parties in Nevis have been talking about joining with St. Kitts, with parties on St. Kitts, none of them have come out specifically and say that they are pushing for the Prime Minister's position. And after 42 years, 1980 until now, it is very obvious to us that Nevis will never get its fair share unless a Nevisian is sitting in the Prime Minister's chair. And so therefore I am asking you to vote for the moral restoration movement. The former Prime Minister, now national hero, said in his address recently that if PAM CCM wins the election, Mark Brantley will be dispatched to Europe as Minister of Aviation. And so
Mr. Caines, why don't I got a minute?
Yeah.
I'll give you another minute. Let's take this call.
Sure.
Good morning. You're on the air for Mr. Caines.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me well?
You are on the air, yes.
Okay, fantastic. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you, Mr. Caines.
Good
I
morning.
listened to your comments, and it was a little bit refreshing. It's great to be able to sit down and listen to candidates map out what they want to map out. I also listened to NRP, and I actually like their forum as well. It's unfortunate that I'm just learning about you now. However, one of the things that I wanted to say is this. The gentleman that kept calling in before, it's clear where he's going with it. But my question is that why is everyone killing the Prime Minister Harris? In the 7 years, has he not done anything right? Also, he came on the heels of a government that was in place for 20 years that made a complete mess. As one who manages an organization, right, it's rather difficult coming on the heels of someone who's not doing their job. So, as someone who is managing the country, is there not anything that Mr. Harris has done correct? That is what I'm trying to understand, is why is there so much dissension on him not doing, and what is wrong with someone saying, if I am elected, here are the things that I'm willing to do, or here are the things that will be on my list of things that I would like to get done. No one in 5 years can go and manage anything and get everything done. And I want people to start being realistic. That's my issue here. You list 10 things, and you look at the order of those 10 things, and then you decide which one is going to be the most important. I wish everyone well. I'm not happy with the CCM. I'll say that right now. I think they've done a poor job. I'm still lost at the point where you walked into Parliament, you took your friend's affairs, and you did not put in fair share, and now you come in and put in a pig in a basket and say that you want fair share. That is not right.
Okay.
And then on top of that, the attacks on the NRP. Why? When he himself have many infractions, he was in the same position as Jenny in many other realms. So why is it that he can attack Jenny and not take the same beam out of his eyes?
Okay.
CCM have done nothing for Nevis.
Okay. All right. Thanks much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Caines, we still got another 2 minutes for which you can wrap up. But if you'd like to quickly address that, but you can go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take one line of what she said. I want everyone to be realistic. She used those words. So I want everyone to be realistic. And tomorrow, accept that this is your country. I only have 2 more minutes, but a lot of people have said to me while I have been going around that they will not be voting. Now that I think is dangerous. This is your country and you need to have a say, and your opportunity is your vote. And so you have another few hours to give it some hard, mature thought, and go out tomorrow and vote for the party of your choice. Vote for the party that you think can take this country forward. It's your decision. If you ask me my opinion, I'll tell you, vote for the MRM. We are definitely looking forward to winning at least 2 seats tomorrow, and hopefully amalgamate with a party on St. Kitts. We don't know which one as yet. But if the results over there are inconclusive, that is, if no party gets 6 seats, then if elected in Nevis, we will be joining with the party on St. Kitts and hopefully demand the Prime Minister's position and move forward. But as I said earlier, we are open for discussions, negotiations, compromise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Caines, and we wish you and your party all the very best at the polls on Friday. And you didn't sign out here as you normally sign out elsewhere.
Say it again?
You did not sign out here just now as you normally sign out elsewhere.
Not sure I understand.
Prime Minister.
Oh, well, Prime Minister in waiting is what, it has been interesting. That has been so interesting. There are some persons who have taken issue with it. There are some persons who are really excited about it. I have decided to refer to myself as the Prime Minister in waiting. This is something that I am very passionate about, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I have been following the politics since 1980, when PAM and NRP form a coalition government, and I have seen how Nevis has been used and dumped, well, given a small amount when we have the balance of power, and then dumped when we don't have it.
Mr. Caines, thank you very much.
Thank you, Webbo.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
You were just listening to the leader of the Morals Restoration Movement, Mr. Samuel Caines. As we continue, that was the second of 3 interviews. The third and final interview will take place at 1 p.m. today, featuring the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. Join us then, and we thank you very much for joining us now.